Hello and welcome to the fifth installment of translating Julius Caesar's account of the Battle of Pharsalus in Book 3 of his Civil War. Today looking at section 87. So in the last section, Pompey has outlined a plan for victory in a speech to his senior commanders. In this section, another one of his senior commanders, Titus Labienus, is going to speak on what he understands the state of Caesar's army to be at this time. And the intention of this is just to provide additional context for why it is that Pompey was confident of victory in the upcoming battle. And so let's get into the text. Nunc Labienus excepit, et cum Caesaris copias despiceret, Pompei consilium summis laudibus eferet. Nulli ingrit existimare Pompei, hunc esse executum qui Galliam Germaniamque diviceret, omnibus inter fui proelius, neque temere incognitam rem pronuntio. Okay, so in the first line, we have a subject easily identifiable, so that's Labienus in the nominative singular, so he's our subject for this verb, and three other verbs in the same line. Here, excapit, which is a perfect tense, third person singular active indicative, can have a few different meanings. So the verb itself is a compound of ex and capio, which so it means to take away from, and from that sense, to single out. So I've gone for Labienus hailed this, which is referring back to Pompey's speech in the last section. An alternative translation is just simply that Labienus spoke next, because there is also a sense of this verb which indicates something following in a sequence. It's kind of up to the translator how you want to interpret that. In any case, I've gone with Labienus hailed and this. So this is the demonstrative pronoun in the accusative singular, the direct object of the verb. So Labienus hailed this, or Labienus spoke next, which he's going to do in any case. Either way, I've gone with Labienus hailed this. Et and cum Caesaris copias despiceret. So here we have cum. The following word is the possessive genitive of Caesar's name, so we can rule out a preposition. In this case, cum is a causal cum, subordinating conjunction indicating cause. So since, and the verb in the imperfect subjunctive here. So third person singular active subjunctive, despiceret, like English despise, despicable, means very much the same thing here. So he looked down on, or he held in contempt, he despised. And our direct object is copias, which is accusative plural, feminine plural, copias meaning forces, and possessive genitive, as I mentioned, of Caesar's name. So since he despised Caesar's forces, or since he held in contempt Caesar's forces, looked down on Caesar's forces, and here's the next verb here's the subject of. So efferat, another imperfect subjunctive, third person singular active, comes from exferre, sort of to hold up or to lift up. Here it's more transfigurative. It's really giving support to, and in this context, giving support to by means of speech, which is sort of indicated here as well. So we've got the ablative plural summis laudibus. Laudibus is the noun. English, to laud something, to give a laudation. to graduate, cum laude or magna cum laude, summa cum laude, which is more pertinent here, with praise, and we've got praise in the plural. So with praises, and summus is a superlative adjective qualifying laudibus. So Labienus has supported summus, like English summit, um, both in the sense of being like the highest point, summit of something, uh, and also in the sense of like if there is a summit meeting, it's a meeting of the heads of state or companies or whatever it might be. So it's a superlative adjective. He's supported with the greatest praise or the highest praise, so it's an ablative of manner. The Concilium Pompeii, the plan, so that's in the accusative singular, direct object of the efferent, and Pompeii here, the possessive genitive of Pompey's name. So Labienus has supported with the greatest praise or the highest praise the plan or strategy of Pompey. And he goes on to say, so inquit, third person singular, active, indicative, present. So we've met this a couple of times. Caesar uses this as the verb for saying when he's writing a speech for someone. It could be translated either in the present tense, as I prefer to do, just for a stylistic reason, or it can be a historic present, in which case you would translate in the perfect past tense. But in any case, he says or said, nolli exista mare. So we have nolli. This is indicating a prohibition in the singular. So you've got nolli or nolite, which would be a plural prohibition for the person concerned. So the person to whom you are giving a prohibition. So nolli, and that always takes an infinitive. It's kind of equivalent of saying be unwilling, and then the verb in the infinitive. So it's a present active infinitive here, existamare, one of Caesar's favored verbs, meaning to think or judge or believe or consider, conclude. Something like do not believe, he says, Pompeii. So here we actually have a vocative form of Pompey's name. So Labienus is addressing Pompey directly, and in Latin that's indicated by using the vocative case. It's syncopated though, so the final verb is chopped off, and it looks like a genitive, but it's the vocative. So he's saying, do not believe Pompey, and now we have what it is that he wants Pompey not to believe. This is in the accusative and infinitive though, so the existamare here is introducing an accusative and infinitive. Hunc exequitum. So we have the demonstrative pronoun meaning this in the accusative singular, and that's going with exequitum, which is also accusative singular, the word for army. So do not think this army, or really this, and then the verb to be here in the present infinitive. This to be the army. And then we've got the relative pronoun qui here in the nominative singular, referring back to the army. This to be the army which, debicaret, imperfect subjunctive, third person singular active. So really the qui is the subject for debicaret, which conquered. It's an alternative form of the verb for conquering. If you think of Caesar's famous phrase, when he wiki, the wiki part of that is the perfect first person active indicative. I conquered. Here, third person singular, active, subjunctive. So the army which conquered Gallium Germaniumque. So Gaul in the accusative singular, and so the que here acting as the connective conjunction, Germanium or Germania. So do not believe, Pompey, this to be the army which conquered Gaul and Germania. Omnibus inter fui proelius, neque temere incognitum rem pronuntio. So this is our first verb. So this is in the first person, active, indicative, perfect tense, inter fui. I was present, and where he was present is omnibus proelius. So proelius is the ablative plural of the word for battle. Omnibus, an adjective qualifying proelius, meaning all. So I was present in all the battles. Neque and not. And that's referring to pronuntio. Again, a first-person singular active indicative. This is in the present tense, though. I am speaking, or I am, like English, pronouncing upon. I am even declaiming upon. I am talking about. And we have an adverb here qualifying the verb temere, like English temerity, or a French téméraire, like recklessly or thoughtlessly, heedlessly. So I am not speaking thoughtlessly about, really, you'd apply in English, rem incognitem. So rem is our direct object, accusative, singular of res. So rem, a matter, incognitem. That's actually a participle, perfect participle, agreeing with rem, like English incognito, in the sense of being unidentifiable and therefore unfamiliar. So Labienus is saying, I was present in all the battles, and I am not speaking thoughtlessly, recklessly, about something unfamiliar. And by way of translation, so from the top, Labienus hailed this in the sense of hailing an achievement or an accomplishment. And since he held Caesar's forces in contempt, supporting Pompey's strategy with the highest praise, he says, do not consider this to be the army which conquered Gaul and Germania. I was present in all the battles, and am not thoughtlessly declaiming upon an unfamiliar matter. And that's fair enough. So Labienus was present with Caesar in Gaul during the entire roughly 10 years that Caesar was there, and had operated sometimes independently of his commander-in-chief on operations. He was trusted quite deeply by Caesar. Also, Caesar and Labienus had cooperated politically prior to the Gallic Wars. So going back to the first section, the Sacerdotio Caesaris, the office of Pontifex Maximus, uh, it was actually Labienus who introduced the legislation which made the Pontifex Maximus open the popular election. It was about 15 years before the events described here. And it was Caesar who directly benefited from this, who successfully got himself elected to that office. And it's usually understood and accepted that Labienus and Caesar had cooperated on that particular piece of legislation. In addition to that, they had cooperated in a trial of a certain Gaius Rabirius for uh, basically treason, extrajudicial murder. It's an interesting trial in itself, subject to a fair amount of discussion and debate. In any case, they had cooperated in that trial, though, as well. And so there's Bits like this, which indicate that Caesar and Labienus were fairly closely associated, and of course, Labienus was requested by Caesar to accompany him to Gaul to be one of his commanders. So they'd been fairly close up until the outbreak of the Civil War, at which point Labienus was the only senior commander from Caesar's staff to go over to the other side and support Pompey and the majority of the Senate when Caesar crossed the Rubicon. The reasons for this are also something of considerable debate. The simplest explanation may be the best, and it's that Labienus was either a client of Pompey's or unofficially a kind of political dependent of Pompey's. Uh, and so he had obligations one way or the other to support Pompey. Another explanation is just that Labienus fought on the side of what he considered to be the legitimate government. There's no definitive evidence one way or the other, though. Um, there is a very interesting article written by Sir Ronald Syme, The Allegiance of Labienus, that's well worth reading. He discusses this, but yeah, it's difficult to come to any definitive conclusions. And a bit of background can be found in The Last Generation of the Roman Republic by Eric Gruen and some of his other writings as well. An interesting figure of study in his own right is Labienus. But most pertinent to what's going on here, he was present in the entirety of the Gallic Wars. So he is something of an authority on what's going on in Caesar's army. And moving on. Per exigua pars illius exequitus super est, magna pars deperiet, quod accidere tot proelius fuit necesse, multos autumni pestilentia in Italia consumsit, multi domum discaserunt, multi sunt relicti incontinenti. So he continues. And we'll start with pars. So that's our subject in the nominative singular. We've got an adjective per exigua agreeing with pars here. English exiguous derives from a version of this word, meaning roughly the same thing, a sort of small or insufficient, feeble, something like that, part. And then we have a perfect partitive genitive here, part going with the genitive. Ilius exequitus. Ilius, the demonstrative pronoun in the genitive singular, meaning that, like that over there, in contrast to this here near me, that over there, far away. That, and that's agreeing with exequitus. The word for army, this is genitive singular. Note the ending, it is a fourth declension noun, not a second declension, so the US ending indicating genitive for this particular word. So a small part of that army, super est. That's our verb. So subject being per example pars. Super est, that's in the present tense, third person singular, active indicative. It's a compound of super and est, like the verb to be. Mean remains here, or lives on. Super, sort of in the sense of going beyond or above something, probably referring to the Gallic War itself. He's kind of saying a small part of that army remains from the Gallic War. Magna pars deperiet. So we've got magna qualifying pars. So we've got that in the nominative singular again. Magna meaning great or large, as it does in modern French. Magna pars deperiet. Deperiet. Perfect tense, third person singular, active indicative. kind of get English perished from this. Yeah, more or less means the same thing here. A great part perished. And then we've got this clause here introduced by quod. So this is here a conjunction meaning because. Let's see how we're going to do this. We'll go to the verb fuit, verb to be in the perfect tense, third person singular active again, indicative. It was necesse, like English necessary. This is kind of an adverb by necessity. Um, hot is an indeclinable adjective, means so many. Kind of by necessity that so many, uh, or it was necessary for so many accidere, which is a present infinitive, meaning to fall, and they fall proelius, ablative plural again of the word for battle. Um, it's necessary so many. It was necessary for so many to fall in the battles. Um, pardon me, or you could even translate that as it was by necessity that they would fall in so many battles. It's not totally clear to me what Todd is qualifying. Um, but in any case, many of them have fallen in battle. But he goes on, multos, which we have many again. This is in the accusative plural, though. So it's a masculine accusative plural. So it's going to be the direct object. Multos, and here's our subject, autumni pestilentia. So pestilentia in the nominative singular feminine, uh, like English pestilence, disease, and autumni is a descriptive genitive, sort of the autumn disease. English autumn comes directly from this. Autumnus means the same thing, the season, autumn. So the autumn disease in Italia, preposition in with Italia in the ablative. So the autumn disease in Italy, consumpsit. Third person singular active indicative perfect tense again. Like English consume, consumption. So to take away. It's one way of putting that. And multos being the direct object, as I mentioned. It's a substantive adjective too. So functioning as a noun, even though it's an adjective. The autumn disease in Italy took many. And we've got the word many again, this time nominative plural, multi discesserunt, third person plural active indicative perfect tense of discedo, means to go away, to depart, and that's taking the locative case of domus, meaning house or home. So many went home. Uh, Kind of like Romani ite domum, these Romans went home. They were discharged in a military context. But many went home. Multi, again, nominative plural, our subject for this passive perfect third person plural. Sunt relicti. Many were relicti, they were left behind, or many remained behind. Incontinenti. Preposition in with the ablative singular. Continenti, I think, does mean the sort of more geographical term here. They were left behind on the mainland, meaning mainland Italy. So he's referring here, I think, to the fact that Caesar did not have enough transports to get all of his men across that he would have liked to. Going from the sort of stiletto heel of Italy across to the Albanian coast, many were left behind. And so, by way of translation here, a feeble remnant of that army lives on. A large part perished, since by necessity so many fell in the battles. The autumn disease in Italy took a sizable number, others were discharged, and a large portion were left behind on the mainland. So I've not translated that literally, partly because the repetition of multos multi doesn't make for very good modern English. It's sort of fine in Latin. That sort of repetition is a stylistic feature, or at least it can be. In English, it just kind of sounds like you've got a very limited vocabulary. So I've used a few different phrases for multi. So a sizable number, others a large portion. So they're just variations on multos and multi, just not to be too literal and to sort of maintain some semblance of style, at least what I can manage anyway. The autumn disease I've kept as is. I assume this refers to respiratory diseases that we still deal with in modern times now. Colds, flus, various forms of like influenza, pneumonia maybe, that tend to crop up when the weather turns cold. I've retained autumn disease though, just it's not really specified beyond that. And sort of retains the feel of the original as well. So I just wanted to retain autumn disease. Could refer to a few different things. Um, Particularly fatal in ancient times. They didn't quite have the ability to build up immunity through nutrition that we do now. Obviously, didn't have vaccination programs, especially the ones that are quite stringently carried out in the defense forces now. And so autumn disease tends to be quite fatal, particularly for those who are not living, well, for those who are living in the cities as well, but maybe to a greater degree, those who are out in the countryside, like marching soldiers, their diet's probably not all that crash hot either. And the level of exertion that commanders like Caesar imposed on their men probably resulted in people being more vulnerable to disease than might otherwise be the case. Um, so the autumn disease, it's a very serious thing. Hence one of the reasons Labienus mentions for the decimation of Caesar's army, basically. Um, and a feeble remnant. So that's a stylistic choice on my part. It captures the sense of what Labienus is really saying. So remnant, I mean part. I think it sort of makes it a bit more clear for a non-specialist reader what Labienus means. That's just my translation, though. Literally a small part of that army lives on, is pretty much fine, or remains. And so there we go. That's it for the second section. So Labienus is going to expand on this a little bit more, but basically the point he's making is that this is not an army of veterans of 10 years of warfare. Most of those veterans, for one reason or another, are not present in Caesar's current army. It's a little bit of encouragement, probably a little bit of hyperbole as well. And he continues. En non audistis ex eius qui per causam valitudinis remanserunt cohortes esse brundisi factas? Haecopiae quas videtis ex dilectibus horum anorum inquiteriore Gallia sunt refectae, et plerique sunt ex colonias transpedanis. Ac tamen quod fuit roboris duobus proelius Diracinis interiet. Okay, so he's opening here with a really a rhetorical question. The particle an here indicates a question, uh, partly because punctuation wasn't something that Roman writers used. So we have "and" to indicate a question. The nature of this line is a question. Non, it's a negative question, sort of in the way that in English we'd ask a rhetorical question by framing it in a negative way, like, do you not know this? Do you not understand this? Do you not, etc., etc. It's a rhetorical question though that Labienus is asking, just to further emphasize his point. And in this case, the main verb is audistis. So we have a second person plural active indicative in the perfect tense. Audistis, it's a syncopated form too. So again, some of the verbs have been, the vowels have been chopped out of this. So normally the form would be audivistis. So it would look something like this, the audivistis. But at this time, some writers decided, yeah, we don't need all of those vowels. If I write audistis, you know what I mean. And kind of something actually, if you look at I mean, probably two different examples. One is a language like modern Persian or modern Arabic. A lot of the vowels aren't written directly; they're just kind of understood in the language. Um, and in modern, since the advent of things like email and phone and that sort of thing, we'll shorten words like, say, message to just like MSG. So all of the vowels are getting chopped out there. We're just retaining a few consonants. And when you see that, you know what it means. Um, but you also understand that there's a full word behind that. So that's something of what is going on here with the syncopation, even though some of the vowels are missing. So really, this word doesn't have all of the letters that it should, but Caesar's audience sort of knows what that word is and what it means. Probably the allusion to the reference to modern Arabic and Persian is probably a bit more relevant for that, though. It's just where the vowels get chopped out just because it's not necessary to write them. They're sort of understood and they are in the spoken language, but not necessarily in the written language. And so we start off with "Did you not hear?" And what is it they didn't hear? So we've got this preposition X, which is quite popular in this section. So going with the ablative plural "eis," from "eis," ablative plural of the demonstrative adjective. Here it's used substantively, though, so it's actually functioning as a noun. From those. And qui, so that's our relative pronoun in the nominative plural. So we've got a relative clause, those who, per causam valitudinis. So we have preposition per with the accusative of causam, like because, on account of. You can sort of see English uh, cause. There we go. Got there eventually. Per causa, on account of, because of, and that's going to take a genitive. So we've got a genitive singular, valitudinis, which means health. In the same way, we can say in English, something didn't happen because of someone's health. Like, I didn't go to work today because of my health. It can refer to ill health or good health, depending on the situation. So the context is important. In this case, it's going to mean ill health. But it can mean good health, and hence you can sort of see in part of the stem here, the wale, the Latin greeting, it's sort of the um, like go away in good health, ave atque wale. So that's valetudinous. So on account of the health, remanserunt, and it's sort of say English remained there. It means the same thing, say third person plural active indicative in the perfect tense. So on account of their health, they had remained, uh, and we have Brundisi in the locative here. So they had remained at Brundisium, but this is a descriptive phrase. So really what we're looking for is what's going on in the main verbs. So our distis, what they have heard is introducing, it's an indirect question here. So it's going in the accusative and infinitive. So we've got our accusative subject here, cohortes. It's plural of cohorts. So cohort in English, it's a division of the legion. 1/10 of a legion, so 10 cohorts to a legion, usually understood as meaning about 500 soldiers, but for the armies of Caesar and Pompey at this time, it is far less than that. Caesar's cohorts, on average, it's something like 250 soldiers, even less. Pompey's a little bit over 300. But in any case, cohortes is our subject. Esse factas is a perfect passive infinitive. The perfect participle factas, so that's the feminine plural accusative ending agreeing with cohortes. So the cohorts that were made, factas, like from facio, uh, French faire, Italian fare, to make. So really here that were made. And so it's the cohorts that were made from those who, on account of their health, had remained at Brundisium. Um, or alternatively, you could say the cohorts that were formed uh, at Brundisium from those who had remained behind on account of their health. But in any case, there's a lot of sick soldiers here, and there's so many of them that entire cohorts are being formed out of them. That's sort of Labienus's point. Hycopiae, so nice and easy subject in the feminine plural nominative. So high meaning these, copiae forces. These forces which, so we've got a relative pronoun, that's feminine plural accusative. So that's going back to hycopiae, but it's performing a different function in the relative clause. It's going to be the direct object of videtis. So we've got another second person plural active indicative. This is in the present tense. So Labienus is addressing his audience here. These forces which you see, yeah, we'll go to the verb. Sunt refecti. So we've got another passive perfect here. Sunt refecti. So yeah, perfect passive, third person plural, indicative. From refacio, sort of to reform or reconstitute, reinforce even, given the context. Something along those lines. These forces which you see have been reformed or were reformed, reconstituted, whichever verb you want to go with. Ex delectibus. So we've got the preposition ex with delectibus. Don't be fooled by delectation and so on in English. That is a very much different word. Delectibus is more related to dilate in the sense of an increase. And so this is in the ablative plural. It's a substantive adjective. In the military context, it refers to levies. So these are new recruits that Caesar has been levying, as we'll see here, over time. And so, let's see, these forces which you see have been reinforced, say, from the levies, hortum anorum. So we've got the demonstrative pronoun in the genitive plural that's agreeing with anorum. Um, so anorum, like anno, so year, but in a plural. So over these years, really, is what it meant here. From the levies of the years, literally, or of these years, um, of those years, even, referring to the 10 years of the Gallic War, in Citeriore Gallia. So we've got preposition in with the ablative singular feminine here for Gallia. Citeriore, it's a comparative adjective meaning nearer, and that's qualifying Gallia. So in nearer Gaul, which is really referring to an area which comprises of modern Provence in southeastern France, um, and part of northern Italy. Basically, as we'll see here, those regions north of what is now the Po River, sort of parts of Liguria, Lombardia, Emilia, Romagna, maybe even bits of Venezia as well, um, northern Tuscany as well, those sort of areas. That's sort of not, they're not officially part of Italy at this time, and they're considered really a part of Gaul. Um, a long, long time before this, one few hundred years, the Gauls had come through and settled in all of those regions of northern Italy. So these forces are recruits from that area that have been sort of regularly levied over the 10 years. And Clerique, so we got Clerique, we met this last time, the majority, so that's in the nominative plural. The majority, the verb to be, third person plural, active indicative in the present tense, sunt, and the majority are ex coloniis transpadanis. So they are from colonius, so that's our noun in the ablative plural, like English colony, um, more or less the same thing. Um, there are settlements which have been given Roman citizenship by Caesar. Um, so he was a bit of a patron of this area, uh, basically building up a support base for himself, handing out citizenship. And so the places, the towns, which is sort of another translation of this, they were considered colonies of Roman citizens. Either part or all of the people of the town were given Roman citizenship, but they're towns in an area where the majority of people do not have the full citizenship. So they're from colonies, transpadanis. So trans, like modern English, sort of across. In this case, meaning the side. If you're thinking of where Rome is, or roughly central Italy, Padanis refers to the Padus River, the modern Po River, which is in the north of Italy. So it's sort of on the other side of the Po River, on that northern side of the Po River, or the Padus River, as they would have thought of it. And so that's an adjectival form agreeing with Colonius. So they're from the Transpadane colonies, we might say in English, from all of those areas that I mentioned earlier. So there's a little bit of prejudice here as well. Caesar's gift of citizenship to these settlements, to people in these settlements, was not taken kindly by his opponents, as you might imagine. So I think part of what Labienus is saying here is they're not true Romans. He's got that kind of prejudice that we see in much later times. For example, that the British had towards colonials, whether they're Australians or Americans, Canadians, whatever it might be. They're mere colonials. They're in the Australian context, they're currency, not sterling. They're not the real deal. They're pale imitations, and so that's kind of what Labienus is getting at. They're mere colonials, not the real deal. Ac tamen quod fuit robores duobus proelius diracenis interiit. So we have, to finish off, we've got this ac, an alternative of atque, sort of that emphatic conjunction, and as well as with tamen, which has an adversative sense to it, like however. Um, the construction will become a little bit clearer. I'll move on because it doesn't quite mean however. It means something more like yet, uh, but I'll get back to that. So we've got quad here meaning just meaning what, uh, and the verb to be in the perfect tense, third person singular active indicative. Um, so the full sense of this phrase is uh, and what yet there was. Um, and then we've got Roboris, which is a genitive. What yet there was of strength or of yeah, I'd go with of strength. The I keep trying to think of something which would sort of go back to its original meaning as it refers to oak wood, like the strength of oak wood. Um, Strength is fine, I think. And what yet there was of strength, and here's our verb, interiit. So we've got another perfect, third person singular active indicative. Another word for perished. So that's sort of interiit. And what yet there was of strength. So that's our subject for the verb. Perished, and they perished in. So this is an ablative of the place or event in which duobus proelius diracenis. So proelius is the noun, the noun, the verb. The noun meaning battle in the ablative plural. Duobus, the number two. So that's an adjective here. And diracenis is another adjective. So the two Dyrrachian battles, Dyrrachianus being the adjectival form of Dyrrachium, the city. So basically, and what yet there was of its strength perished in the two Dyrrachian battles, or something along those lines. Get a bit more like idiomatic, like the flower of the army perished in the two Dyrrachian battles, something like that. And so what I've got here. Did you not hear of the cohorts formed from those who had stayed behind at Brundisium because of their ill health? These forces which you see have been reconstituted from the levies raised over the years in Near Gaul, and the majority are from the Transpedane colonies. What yet remained of its strength perished in two Dracian battles. So, in summary, Labienus is saying there's nothing left of Caesar's veteran army, or there is such a small part of the original veteran component left that it's really a negligible force and it's not anything to worry about. Um, at Dyrrachium, Caesar, according to himself, lost about 960 soldiers, largely from the Ninth Legion. It's probably a bit of hyperbole on Labienus's part, though. As we will see, the 10th Legion, which was Caesar's favorite legion throughout his time in Gaul and later, is still very much intact. Uh, Possibly many of its troops were recruits from the Transpadane colonies. Um, that doesn't seem to be supported by what Caesar himself says about it, though. But in any case, really what we're getting from Caesar here is the perspective of the Pompeian High Command. Um, and so one of the reasons they think that they can rout Caesar's army, as Pompey said in the last section, without really having to fight an infantry engagement, just having the cavalry surround the infantry will be enough to break their morale and make them flee. The reason for this is that the veteran corps is gone. They're all recruits of varying quality, uh, and not even Roman citizens really, not people that perhaps Labienus and Pompey and others would consider to be true Roman citizens. They're colonials. They're of a lesser stock. And so we can expect them not to perform too well in the battle to come. This is Labienus's perspective. However, um, just by way of a little bit of interest, just this region that I'm mentioning. So where exactly is that? I'll bring that up now. So it's northern Italy, as I said. The pin in the map just indicates one point of the modern Po River, the ancient Padus. That flows from the eastern Adriatic coast, sort of midway between modern Venice and Ravenna, which I've circled at the bottom right there. Roughly midway between the two, the river is quite large. It flows pretty much all the way across into sort of modern Lombardia. Um, so in the north of Italy. Places I've circled, just a few places of interest for various reasons. So going from left to right, firstly we have modern Vercelli. This is the modern town on or near the ancient site of Vercellae. This is where Marius and Lutatius Catulus defeated the Germanic tribes in it was 101 BC, about 50 years before the events described here. In any case, so it was a major victory which ended the German or Germanic rather threat to Rome for quite some time to come. It was a major victory in any case. So that's the red circle on the left, far left there. Moving clockwise up to Como. So it's famous in modern times. Lake Como, definitely worth visiting if you can manage it. This is where Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger were to come from. So Pliny the Elder wrote a natural history, part of which still survives. Um, he died in the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. So he was the commander of the fleet at Misenum, modern Miseno. And when the volcano erupted, he ordered the fleet to go rescue as many people as they could. But he himself ended up falling victim to basically the poisoned air, all of the sort of smoke and ash and um, all the rest of it that comes with volcanic eruption. He died trying to save people from the eruption. His son, Pliny the Younger, was a prominent politician through the Flavian era and into the later reigns of Nerva and especially Trajan. And so his letters, particularly as a governor of Bithynia during the reign of Trajan, are something which still survive today and are quite interesting in their own right. But a famous writer like his father. And so they came from Como, which is very much to the north of Italy there, north of Milan. And Milan itself, obviously, being a Transpadane region too. Um, let's see, moving to the east. So we have Verona next. It's where the poet Catullus from the late Republic came from. So a very famous poet. His poetry survives into modern times as well. He lampooned Caesar at some point as well. Uh, so a famous writer from this region. And another famous writer, so if you go to the right, Padua, so ancient Patavium. This is where Livy the historian was born, Titus Livius. So getting born, no, he would have been maybe 10 years old at this point, possibly. Um, became famous in the Augustan era as the author of the history of Rome, most of which, well, a lot of which anyway, has survived into modern times and informs a lot of our understanding of especially the early Roman history, like the period of the kings, that sort of semi-mythological period of basically from the founding of even before the founding of Rome, actually, the flight from Troy of Aeneas and company, as well as the settlement of Antenor as well, which was separate to Aeneas's journey, but nevertheless made its way to the region of what is now modern Venezia. So from that time, the end of the Trojan War, the sort of early settlements at sort of near Rome, but not quite in Rome, at Alba, and then the development of Rome under the kings and the early Republic and so on. A lot of that is informed by Livy's histories. And finally, we have Ravenna. It's not a Transpennine region. It's to the south of the river. Just provides a little bit of context where everything is. Um, as an interesting historical note, so later on, the Padus River did become the official boundary of Italy. So it was moved north from the Rubicon, which Caesar crossed in the Civil War. About 600 years later, after the Western Roman Empire has collapsed, Justinian launches his wars of reconquest. Belisarius pulls off something of a miracle and invades the Ostrogoth kingdom of Italy with 7,500 men and somehow manages to win some absolutely spectacular victories, especially at Rome itself when he has to defend against a Gothic or Ostrogothic army, which outnumbers him many times over. Um, Nonetheless, he pins the Ostrogoths down into Ravenna. It's at this point that Justinian sends emissaries to conclude a peace with the Ostrogoths, delineating the Padus River, the Po River, as the border between the now Roman or East Roman occupied Italy and the Ostrogoths, who were to occupy the Transpennine regions. And so, one of the reasons Justinian chose the Padus River is it was the official boundary of Italy. He'd set out to reconquer Italy. He felt that he had achieved that, and so he didn't feel the need to go any further at that point. There were other quite pressing reasons as well, but that was one of them. And so there we are. That's a little bit of Transpennine history and interesting points, just to get a feel for what it is that Labienus is talking about. And moving on. So Labienus has now finished his speech. We're coming back to Caesar, the author, now describing things. Haec cum dixisset, Iuravit se nisi victorem in castra non reversurum reliquosque ut idem facerent votatus est. Hoc laudens Pompeius idem iravit, nec vero ex reliquis fuit quisquam qui iurari dubitaret. So, nice and easy. Let's just start off with the verb. So we have a pluperfect subjunctive here of the verb for saying, third person singular active. So he had said, and we have cum here This is a subordinating conjunction. So temporal cum, when he had said, and hike is the direct object here. Accusative plural neuter. Literally when he had said these things. So it's the demonstrative pronoun. When he had said these things, and then we're straight into the next verb. Labienus is the subject of it, and we're switching back into the indicative for this one. So perfect tense, third person singular active, indicative. it. He swore an oath. So you can sort of see here like sort of the root of like jury and jurors and that sort of sense. Here, though, the verb it, meaning he swore an oath. So it is something to swear an oath because of the overlapping of religious and state and legal concepts. To swear an oath has a kind of legal connotation to it. And so he swore an oath that, and we're kind of going into accusative infinitive here. Say, so we've got a reflexive pronoun, third person accusative. He swore an oath that he himself, nisi, unless victorem. So we have victorem. This is not Victoria, meaning victory. This is as a victor, as a conqueror. That's an accusative singular there as well. So it's kind of predicate. Unless as a conqueror in castra. So we have preposition in here with the accusative plural of the word for camp. So sort of going towards the camps, non reversurum. So we've got the negation there. Reversurum, English reverse. So it's pretty clear from that. And it's a future infinitive. And so it's kind of going, he would not go back to the camps unless as a victor. That's the oath he has sworn, that he would not go back to the camp unless as a victor. So he's basically saying, I will die with my sword in my hand in the battle rather than disgrace myself by retreating back to the camp, which is what camps were for. But in any case, reliquosque. So we have the que, that's connective conjunction, and then we have another accusative, this time plural. It's a substantive adjective, so describing those, not really those remaining. It's really means the others here, referring to Labienus's audience. It's sort of those remaining who were not Labienus himself, which is everybody else. So it's kind of and the others, and it's going to be a direct object. And the others, and it's the direct object of this verb here, hortatus est. So that's in the perfect tense again, another indicative verb. Third person singular active. It's a deponent verb, so the form looks passive, but the meaning of it is active. So English exhortation, so encourage, prevail upon, even. And that is going to introduce an indirect statement. So we have ut and the subjunctive verb here. So he encouraged, and he encouraged the others that, and here's our verb, facerent, a third person plural active subjunctive in the imperfect, that really that they should make, in the same sense that in English we make an oath. English, yeah, make an oath. Idem, pronoun meaning the same, and that's in the accusative singular, so idem. Well, the id is accusative, idem is the form indicating the same. He encouraged the others to make the same oath. Uh, and he goes on, Hoc laudens Pompeius idem iravit. So we've got two nominatives here. Pompeius is our subject. Got a participle agreeing with Pompeius, so laudans in the present tense, nominative singular. So we met laudibus earlier, that's the ablative plural noun of praise. Laudans is the participle, so praising. And hoc, the demonstrative pronoun in the accusative singular, again, praising this. Pompeius juravit again, so swore. Idem, also again, the same. So praising this, Pompey swore the same oath. Nec vero ex reliquis fuit quisquam qui jurare dubitaret. So nec, an alternative of neque. We saw that a little bit earlier, wherever that was. Can't find it at the moment. I'm sure it's there somewhere. Anyway, neque, and not. Vero, so it's an ablative functioning as an adverb. Indeed, in truth. Um, yeah, okay. So here's our first verb out of three. Fuit, the verb to be, yeah, we've come across this a couple of times now. Perfect tense, third person singular active indicative. Was there, quisquam, which is a kind of indefinite pronoun, a one. X-ray liquis, from among them. So we got the preposition ex with the ablative plural reliquis. So reliquos is the accusative plural of adjective, substantive adjective. So functioning as a noun as it is here. So from among the others. Nor indeed was there a one from among the others. Qui, who, nominative plural, so it's referring back to all of these others. But the subject, it's singular, um, a one from among those others. Dubitaret, imperfect subjunctive, third person singular active, like English dubious, doubtful, but if you feel dubious about something, it also means you would hesitate, like if you felt dubious about doing something, which is the case here, then you would be hesitating to do it. And that's the sense of dubitaret here. One who would hesitate, um, or really who hesitated, jurare. So we got present infinitive active of that verb, juravit. So nor indeed was there a one from among them who hesitated jurare, to swear. So Labienus has wrapped up his speech with an oath that he is not going to return to the camp unless as a victor. In other words, to die sword in hand in the battle itself. Um, Very much an expression of confidence, though. Not all that practical because the whole point of a camp and the Romans were, more than most other peoples of the time, prone to building camps. The whole point of it was to have somewhere safe to retreat to if the battle shouldn't go to plan, if there was a surprise attack and the Romans expected to find themselves at a disadvantage. So it's an expression of confidence, again, quite hyperbolic. However, given the level of confidence, Pompey has praised it and sworn the same, and indeed so have all the others in Pompey's high command. So there's great expectation of victory here. And by way of translation, when he had said these things, he swore an oath that he himself would not return to the camp unless as a victor, and he prevailed upon the others to swear the same. Praising this, Pompey swore the oath, nor indeed was there any among them who hesitated to swear. Okay, so as Caesar will say here, everyone's feeling pretty good about what's going on. Haec cum facta sunt in concilio magna spe et laetitia omnium discessum est, ac iam animo victoriam precipiebat, quod de tanta et a tam perito imperatore nihil frustra confirmare videbatur. So we're going to wrap up just with this final thought from Caesar. We have hike again. This time, though, it's a nominative plural in the neuter. So the demonstrative pronoun again. These things, cum, yeah, again, temporal cum. When these things facta sunt, passive, yeah, passive perfect, third person plural indicative. Facta from facio, French faire, Italian fare, to complete something, really to bring it to completion when they had been done. When these things had been done in concilio, in council, preposition in with the ablative singular. And we'll go to our verb, which is another passive. Another perfect tense, third person singular, passive indicative. So we saw the active perfect third person plural earlier, referring to soldiers who had gone home, disgesserunt. So the same verb here, but a different form of it. So disgessum est, it was dismissed. Literally it was sent away, referring to the council. It was dismissed is probably the best. And then we've got the ablative of manner here. Magna spe. So we've got magna again, this time ablative singular agreeing with spe, which is the noun, meaning hope. So with great hope and laetitia. Sort of means a lightness of feeling. Not, I mean, it can mean levity in certain contexts. I don't quite think that's what Caesar's going for here. Something more along the lines of optimism. That's what I've gone for. It's that lightness of feeling that comes from having a great deal of confidence in a plan. When these things had been done in the council, you could even say in the council. As I said before, Latin doesn't have a definite article. It was dismissed with great hope and optimism. But great hope and optimism omnium, which is in the genitive plural. Kind of, I think here a genitive of person concerned, like for all or of all. I've sort of made it more a descriptive genitive, like a universal feeling of hope and optimism. Um, but it is a genitive plural, so it's really referring to the feeling held by all of the participants. Ac iam animo victoriam precipiebat. So ac again, that sort of emphatic conjunction, and iam already, so the adverb of time. This is another ablative, I'll get to that in a second. Precipiebat. So we have them the indicative verb, third person plural active in indicative, as I said. Precipiebat, they were anticipating. And direct object is victoriam, so here, victory. And they were anticipating victory animo, which is ablative singular, animus, sort of in, you could say in their minds, which really would translate more like something they were already imagining victory. They already anticipated victory in their heads, in spirit. Um, that's what I've gone for is, and they were already anticipating victory in spirit. Um, Animo referring to many different things, from the mind, the soul, the spirit, to feelings. Um, Fairly versatile. So in any case, they were anticipating victory. There is a sense though, like it is in thought. So it's a kind of they're envisioning victory. Uh, Quod deretanta et aetam perito imperator. Quod deretanta. Yeah, another because. So it's another conjunction. Or since. Preposition day with the ablative singular of raise. So with regards to, that's qualified by tanta here. Also in the ablative agreeing with ray. With regards to such a matter, since with regards to such a matter, and we've got a preposition which is separation from, so really coming from, in the same sense as we would say that in English. Tam, which is an alternative indeclinable form of tanta or tantum, tantus. Tam perito, and we have a participle qualifying imperatore. So this is in the it's perfect participle, ablative singular. Experienced is what this means. So English, like experienced, is a bit of a compound of this. You would have ex perito, but perito in Latin works perfectly fine to mean the same thing. Experienced, and that is agreeing with imperatore, which is in the ablative singular. At this time, it doesn't mean emperor, because there were no emperors yet. Although we're getting quite close to that point. Imper Imperatore, Imperator. I don't think there's a single English word that quite captures what this means. It's not just a, like you would translate it normally as like commander or general or something like that, unless the context specifically called for something else. But an Imperator was not just a commander, but a commander who had proven his ability, with a major victory, or at least one major victory. Um, and not just a commander, but more a commander in chief as well. Not in the sort of presidential sense, though that is where the idea of an emperor ended up sort of taking shape. But someone who had to organize a campaign and had won major battles. That's really what imperatore means. And so to have an experienced imperatore is to really say, like, this is one of the top experienced, skilled commanders of the time. And so a statement from such an experienced commander who had proven himself over time, like a proven commander. That might actually be a good way to translate it. Proven commander. Videbatur. So we've got an imperfect Imperfect, indicative verb, third person singular passive of the verb to see. So it seemed or it appeared. So coming from such an experienced, proven commander, uh, it seemed that, or it seemed, yeah, because that's taken an infinitive here. Confirmare, which is a passive present infinitive, like confirm, sort of strengthened or assured, guaranteed. Nihil frustra, bit difficult to get the proper sense of this. Nihil meaning nothing. Frustra, it's really meaning something like going astray, or it's a participle. Perfect participle. Yeah, like nothing would go astray. Nothing would be mistaken. Um, Nothing would be left out or overlooked. That's kind of the sense of that. The point being that, yes, like since the matter was so important, and obviously we have our very experienced commander, our proven commander, it seemed guaranteed that nothing had been overlooked. And so what I've got here, once these resolutions had been carried out in the council, it was dismissed with a universal feeling of hope and optimism. And indeed, they were already anticipating victory in spirit, because on such a matter, and from such an experienced commander, it seemed to be guaranteed that no error had been made. So there we have it. Yeah, that last part I've just gone with guaranteed that no error had been made. Yeah, as I sort of went through, there's a few different ways to translate that. Um, Resolutions is what I've used rather than saying these things. Um, Resolutions had been carried out, and so that's the facta sunt part of that in the council. And as I said earlier, I've translated the Magnus Bay et Laetitia Omnium as a universal feeling of hope and optimism. Um, Not quite literal, but captures the sense of it. As I said, it's a feeling of great hope and optimism or lightness of feeling of all. And indeed, da 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 da. So there we go. Yeah, section 87 wrapped up there. That was quite a long section, so this video's gone for quite a long time. An important section to cover before the battle, though. It's not just another speech, it's Caesar outlining why it is, again, that the Pompeian side felt so confident of victory. And so in the last section, we looked at what the actual plan was to achieve victory with the cavalry. And in this section, it's talking about what they considered the state of Caesar's army to be, and basically saying it's not a veteran army, it's not experienced, it's not that sort of legendary army that people have been talking about for the last 10 years or so, or even especially since the battle at Alesia, which more or less decided the Gallic War, even if it didn't quite finish it off. Um, and so there is an element here. Perhaps it is in one part that Pompey's high command don't properly understand the composition of Caesar's army. Part of it, I think, is a speech purely of encouragement that is intended to sort of cascade down the command to the frontline troops so that they can feel confident when they go into battle that they're not taking on uh, people they would probably consider to be legends. And important to note in this regard is that part of the army serving under Pompey at this point. Um, had until fairly recently been had been serving with Caesar in Gaul as well. So there were two legions. I think it's the first and the third that Caesar had been, before he had crossed the Rubicon, had been ordered by the Senate to give up as sort of. It was meant to be kind of a quite a gesture of goodwill, but maybe a commitment by both himself and Pompey that they would start a kind of de-escalation process. And so there was a resolution by the Senate that Caesar and Pompey both give up one legion. However, since Pompey had lent Caesar a legion, he said, "Well, Caesar can he can give up his own legion, and at the same time he can give up the legion that I lent him." Thereby, Caesar loses two legions and Pompey loses zero. A little bit of a scurrilous interpretation of a senatorial resolution, but point being, some of these soldiers would have served under Caesar as well, and were probably contributing to a general feeling in Pompey's army that they were taking on a veteran army, basically, that an army that was, for the most part, comprised of soldiers who had been fighting a war for 10 years and had been, in the main, victorious over a numerous and dangerous enemy, and had even recently overcome Pompey's own veteran legions in Spain. So I think this is intended partly as encouragement as well, to the extent that this speech actually took place, which is something we always need to keep in mind when translating Caesar's account. It is Caesar's account, so it's not purely objective. And where he got this information from is not totally clear either. Some informant, someone who had come back over to Caesar's side later on. So I always think it's Marcus Brutus, but that is pure speculation. In any case, that is section 87. So in the next section, and the one after it as well, I think as well, um, it's going to be a description of their dispositions for the engagement itself. So we're going to be moving out of the speeches and into the composition of the armies and how they're deployed before the battle. So there we are. Yes, that was a very long video. So if you've managed to hang in there, thank you for hanging in there. And I will see you the next time when I have something ready for you. So stay safe, take care, and toodle pip.